What do you get when you mix a cup of narcissism, a handful of cash, a few tablespoons of opportunity, and a gallon of gender role conditioning? Well, my friends, you get the Ratliff family in all their glory on season 3 of The White Lotus. This episode does contain spoilers, so if you have not watched season 3, well, it's been out for months now, so sorry, not sorry. Today I wanted to have a little bit of fun and lighten things up just a tad. So we are unpacking those Ratliff men and the stereotypes that they embody so perfectly, and why we need to peek under the hood of what we call quote-unquote toxic masculinity if we actually want to dismantle it. Because spoiler alert, it's not just about arrogance or bad behavior. It's about the deep conditioning that shapes how men see themselves, their worth, and their relationships. And don't worry, fellas, in true connection coach fashion, you are not alone going under the microscope. Ladies, I'm talking to you too. We are also going to talk about how Victoria and Piper Ratliff are equally steeped in gender role conditioning that keeps the cycle spinning. So grab your metaphorical sun hat and Aperol spritz, and let's get into it. Throw out the rules, forget the cliches. This isn't about the perfect profile or the perfect date. It's about real connection. It's time to strip away the masks, shed the stories, and drop those old patterns that no longer serve you. Tired of dating advice that doesn't fit? So are we. Welcome to Stripped, Drop Your Patterns, where conscious dating isn't about following a script. It's about embracing your whole self and attracting the kind of love that sets your soul on fire. I'm Rachel J., the connection coach and your host. Let's get real. All right. Okay, if you have seen season 3 of The White Lotus, you already know that the Ratliff men, Timothy, Saxon, and Lochlan, are the kind of characters that make you want to groan and roll your eyes and probably pour a drink. Not because these characters are badly written, but because they're too well written. They are walking, talking tropes of masculinity gone sideways, and they are perfect examples of why quote-unquote success on paper does not guarantee connection, fulfillment, or healthy relationships. Let's start with Timothy, the dad. On the surface, he is the picture of old school success, the career, the money, the status. But if you peel back one layer of that polished exterior, you'll see a man whose identity is so bound up in being the provider that he is almost a ghost in his own relationships. His marriage is more like a business partnership than an emotional one, and you can feel that chasm between him and his wife, who, don't worry, we're gonna get to Miss Victoria. So Timothy has mastered that provision aspect of masculinity, but not presence. And that is a mask that a lot of men are taught to wear. Timothy is the kind of man who has been probably taught his whole life that his value lies in his ability to dominate the room, provide financially for his family, and keep any sign of emotional depth safely locked away, particularly fear, which is what Timothy's dealing with. So here's the thing. We love to roll our eyes at characters like this, but the reason it works so well in the show is because Timothy demonstrates traits that we see all the time. He represents centuries of conditioning that tells men that vulnerability equals weakness, that status equals worth, and that their role in the family is to be the provider, not the connector. Now, the problem is that this mask works until it doesn't. So when success starts to lose its shine, or when relationships require more than just a paycheck, men like Timothy face a full-on identity crisis, where without that role, they're left wondering, well, who am I without my accomplishments? What do I have to offer if I can't provide it or buy it? How do I tell my family that I failed them? This is a big one. So the lengths that Timothy is willing to go to just to avoid letting his family down, well, let's just say that poisoning your family is not the solution. And while I'm saying that with a touch of humor, it's important to note that Timothy's extreme reaction to failure was not just written purely for entertainment value. That wasn't written out of thin air. It reflects real struggles that play out in households across the country and become news stories. So heavy stuff out of the way, let's get back to the Ratliffs and dive into Saxon, whose charm and bravado show how these patterns continue to the next generation. So Saxon is like Timothy 2.0, but with Instagram filters. He's hyper competitive, image obsessed, constantly performing the role of the alpha. But as we come to find out through this season, that facade is brittle. He is performing the role that he's been handed. Charm, conquest, repeat. But you can see the insecurity poking through in the way that he talks to women, the way that he treats relationships as trophies, the way he does not take no for an answer when Chelsea reiterates over and over and over her disinterest. He is not chasing connection at all. He's chasing validation. And maybe he needs to listen to my first episode. He'll learn a little bit more about what he's actually looking for. But he's chasing that validation often from women who he expects to be attracted to his image, but they aren't able to connect with anything deeper. He doesn't show that side of himself. And later he does try with Chelsea, but it's still in a gross, pushy kind of way. And she tries to help him grow, but she still has to reiterate that she's not romantically interested. Anyway, we're getting a little too into the details. But all that to say, that's the trap, because when all you know is how to perform masculinity, flashing the money, making the jokes, seducing the room, you never learn how to be a man who can sit in vulnerability, listen deeply, or build a relationship that isn't merely transactional. And we label guys like Saxon as players or bros or douchebags, but really he's just repeating the same subconscious patterns that were modeled for him, that women are prizes, not partners. The trophy wife. He learned that intimacy is physical and not emotional, and that your worth is measured in achievement, not alignment. And when Saxon learns that his dad's firm is in trouble, without even knowing the extent of the trouble, he goes into full panic and meltdown. And there was a line in the confrontation scene with his dad at Chloe's party when he said,
I don't have anything else but this. I don't have any interests. I don't have any hobbies. Okay, if I'm not a success, then I'm nothing. And I can't handle being nothing.
This scene, along with Saxon's repeated inability to connect with any female he meets through vulnerability, humility, or genuine interest, demonstrates the pressure that he feels to meet certain markers of success, and that without them, the whole facade of his identity and his appeal crumbles. Now, Lochlan. Oh, poor sweet baby Lochlan. The youngest son who is the most hopeful while being the hardest to figure out, because we don't really know what Lochlan wants for himself. He's almost the antithesis of his father and brother. He's drifting, directionless, and allergic to anything that smells like responsibility. He's not as flashy, not as outwardly aggressive in his masculinity, but he's still affected by the same conditioning and pressure to fit certain expectations, depending on which family member he's with. He just wants to please everyone in his family and is fumbling his way through carving his own path. But damn if it ain't messy. Lochlan seems very unlike the rest of the Ratliffs and is perhaps even resentful of the family dynamic, but he's lacking the confidence to chart a different path. And it's worth noting that Lochlan fully benefits from his position of privilege and really can pursue whatever path he chooses, if he ever chooses one. So Lochlan is the guy who could break the cycle, but only if he's willing to do the uncomfortable work of questioning those dynamics that shaped him and redefining what success and masculinity mean to him. So what all three of these characters have in common is this: they are deeply disconnected from themselves, which translates into their relationships with the female members of the Ratliff family and the other women that they pursue at the resort. They've been conditioned to see masculinity as performance, not as an authentic expression of identity. And when that performance inevitably falters, they're left with a crisis of identity and no real tools for how to bridge that gap. And so here's the thing, this isn't just a Ratliff family problem. This is why their character development is so freaking delicious, because we see it in our own lives all the time. I see versions of this constantly in my coaching practice. Men who have spent years building their careers, checking every box that society told them to, only to realize that they don't actually have the kind of connection they thought they'd get as a reward. They've been told that success will attract a wife, but no one told them how to cultivate partnership and how to maintain it, or how to create the safety and honesty required for an aligned, lasting bond. Okay, are you ready to get into the ladies? Let's talk about Victoria. the perfectly conditioned wife and mom. So Victoria's entire identity is built on the classic feminine conditioning script. Marry a successful provider, raise the kids, and look good doing it. So in Victoria's mind, she played by the rules. She did everything right. She married Timothy. She bore the kids. She kept the family shiny enough to earn her social standing. Status secured, box checked. And that's why Piper's rebellion hit so hard. By wanting to join the monastery, Piper isn't just rejecting the Ratliff legacy, she's rejecting Victoria's whole life path. To Victoria, that's not just a personal choice, it is a straight up slap in the face. Because if her daughter doesn't buy into that script, then what does that say about the life that she sacrificed her own options to uphold? Victoria also props up Saxon's bro-havior by laughing at it. The same way that society shrugs and says, boys will be boys, she's not going to challenge him because deep down, she is still invested in maintaining the very structure that keeps her financially safe. And without Timothy's money, Victoria would be completely untethered. And that reality literally almost kills her. Then we have Piper. Piper comes in wearing the mask of rebellion. She is so above her family's capitalist, materialist, status-obsessed ways. She's here to study Buddhism. She is the woke one, the spiritual one, the evolved one. She likes to look down her nose at everybody in her family's behavior. But if you look closer, her so-called independence is still wrapped in the privilege that she claims to disdain. Her enlightenment is funded by her father's money. Her rebellion is safe and curated. She's still entitled, still self-absorbed, and when push comes to shove, she pulls back from making the truly uncomfortable choice. The monastery sounds great until she tries it for one night and realizes that it means giving up the lifestyle she secretly enjoys criticizing from the safety of her room. Her conditioning is the double bind that modern women inherit. The pressure to be the good girl who follows the old script and also to be the strong, enlightened, independent woman who rejects it. It's that push-pull that we've talked about in previous episodes. And despite Piper's fierce intentions to fit a modern, empowered model, in the end, she's just another Ratliff, privileged, protected, and grappling with her own lack of self-knowledge. So Victoria and Piper are the products of gender role conditioning too. They're just on the other side of that coin. Victoria's proof that toxic masculinity does not survive in a vacuum, that it's upheld by the women who were taught their worth depended on tolerating it. And Piper resents what happens when we try to transcend conditioning without actually stripping it away. She wants to be spiritual, free, and independent, but not if it means losing her family's safety net. Both of the Ratliff women are just as disconnected from authenticity as Timothy, Saxon, and Lochlan. They're wearing the same mask, just in a soft shade of pink. So here's where it all ties together. The Ratliff family, for all their wealth and privilege, share one thing. They are completely disconnected from themselves and from each other. The men perform success, the women uphold or rebel against the script, but nobody is actually relating to one another from a place of authenticity. Why is this? Well, that's because connection requires safety and trust. And when your identity is built on a performance, on being the provider, the golden boy, the rebel, the baby, or the good wife, there's no space for real intimacy. Everyone is too busy defending their mask to risk being seen underneath. So this is where the conversation around toxic masculinity and even toxic femininity often gets misunderstood. It's not that these people are inherently bad, it's that they've been conditioned into rigid roles that suffocate their emotional range and starve their relationships. Victoria plays the entitled wife, Piper plays the enlightened rebel, Timothy is the dutiful provider, Saxon the protege, Lochlan the favorite. And in their own ways, each one of them is trapped. Now, if you listened to my last episode, you'll remember that we talked about how so many men and women choose incompatible partners in their early dating years because they haven't, one, addressed their subconscious patterns that comes from their family upbringing, the conditioning from society, and so on. Two, they haven't figured out what they actually want and value in a partner. And three, they haven't taken repeated aligned action toward their true desires. The Ratliff family is a living, breathing case study of what happens when you skip those steps. Without identifying your patterns, you just repeat what's familiar. Without clarifying what truly matters to you, you chase whatever temporarily soothes your ego. And without taking consistent action to live from alignment, you get stuck performing someone else's idea of quote-unquote success while you're wondering why you still feel empty. I see this all the time with my clients. Men who have nailed the career game, who have the house, the title, the paycheck, but who quietly admit to me that they're lonely, that their dating life feels like a disaster, or that their relationship feels like two roommates. When we strip away the conditioning, what they discover is that what they actually crave is not another achievement, but it's genuine intimacy. A partner who sees them for who they are and not what they do. The confidence to show up authentically without fear that being vulnerable makes them less of a man. And that is when everything changes. Because the truth is, you don't have to choose between success and connection. You can have both. Ambition and emotional depth, drive and vulnerability, attraction and safety, but only if you're willing to take off the mask and do the work. So whether you see yourself in any of the Ratliffs, remember this. Masculinity and femininity are not about living up to a stereotype. They're about knowing yourself deeply enough to live from alignment and not performance. Stay kind, my friends, and remember to recognize that the person across from you is battling their own lineage of conditioned bullshit. See you next time.